Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very energetic, youthful farmers rep in the Senate. And this morning, it's my pleasure to invite Senator Roderick St Clair to the podium to make some remarks. Let us welcome him, please.
One, two, one. 1, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, well, I don't have the protocol list, but I think that it's not wise to stand on the protocol from particularly the office for which I hold, but I want to, of course, recognize the Minister for Agriculture, Lands, Forestry, and of course, Labor, Honorable Peter David. I want to recognize, of course, his Permanent Secretary, Mr. Elvis Morin. Of course, I would say the rest of the diplomatic corps, representatives of the UNDP, the ICA, CADI, and of course, the rest of the Ministry of Agriculture staff, the farmers, representative from SAIP and other collaborating programs within Grenada, supporting agriculture. Of course, we need to recognize the media, and I want to say a special, and I call it the agriculture media. I said it's the best media in Grenada, the team of Karima and so on. I think it's an excellent team of youth that is doing a good work. Thank you. Before I go further, I want to also stand on persons who would have gone before me in senatorial positions, person like Mr. Dudley Andrews, may his soul rest in peace. I know we have Senator Kit Clouden of the past, and of course, my immediate predecessor, Dr. Dunstan Campbell. So I'm not sure if I leave out any others, but if I do, my apologies and need some education in that regards. I also want to recognize persons, farmers, contributors who would have passed, who have died for different causes or circumstances in the course of contributing to this country's food security and development. I want to recognize them and the families who would continue today the efforts that they would have started from whence back. As I stand here this morning to make remarks, particularly with regards to this event, I want to also thank the Minister and his team of the Ministry of Agriculture for seeing it fit to have me invited, because they could have not invited us, okay, to make remarks and to make remarks too. So we want to really recognize that inclusion in the process. I also want to compliment the Minister for the work that he has been doing since he started. Two of us started just around the same time last year in October. So it is really good that I'm doing my part and I look at him closely and he's doing his part, and so that we can complement each other for what we are doing for the betterment of this country. Sometimes if he's going the wrong way, I would call him and say, look, Minister, I think you need some help here. You know, and he does good. I say it's good, and we need to do those things. And if we don't have those other relationship, then what happens is that the benefit of our farmers in this country will suffer. We both have the same interests. So this event here, I see it as a sort of coming together, capsulating after he has gone around, look around to come. I know he's new, so I cannot be too hard on him. I've been around over 20-something years toiling in it, so I'm happy that he's coming up. And this session I hear today could give the ministry and give himself also an opportunity to create a new beginning under his perspective. So I think this is really complimentary, because this event didn't even have to happen, you know, but it's on. And I as I was reading, I say it's what they call a red letter day. It's a day that you need to recognize, and a day you need to have fixed. And maybe we need to have an annual conference where we come back and look and see what we have done and reset for the next year. So these are the type of foresight that we need to see for our sector, not only other sectors, for our sector, agriculture in this particular case. In terms of the topic, we speak about the policies and the legislations and so on that will support agriculture. And this is the main focus of today's session. I saw it very thoughtful, but I wanted to make a little amendment to it and not only speak about supportive, but it must be transformative. And I think P.S. Morin spoke about that. It must be transformative legislation, transformative policies, and transformative implementation. Okay? Because if it's supporting, you could support, but we may not get the sort of difference and the sort of positive change that we need. So this is one aspect I want us in our mind as we go through today, that we think about whatever it is has been transformative. Okay? And so I also applaud that angle of the dimension, because it's more than going to the farm and doing the work, but there are a lot of structures that are missing. And as a senator, I've begun to discover those things right now. So for example, you would have realized only recently we'd have had the issuance of petition by our farmers to look at the whole making feed more affordable. We look at the whole issue of the Caribbean Agro Agreement and how does that affect our farmers and our sector. This is policy. This is legislation. We look at the whole issue with Pre-Elasini, which a lot of work is being going on in that angle. We also look at the issue of the crop compensation schedule, which wasn't revised in 25 years. Those things affect the compensation to farmers when they have losses. And the next one we are going to be addressing, Minister, and gathering, is the whole issue of price controlling of agricultural inputs for our farmers. That has to be addressed so that we could have better and more affordable food for the nation and farmers' costs can go down. So this is the next agenda item from a legislative standpoint. So I like where you're going, and this is good. At the same time, I want to say that we also have to look at structure. And I want us to not lose sight of that. Because whilst we have agriculture in its broadest space, and I was mentioning to the minister a while ago, and I want to say this, is that we need to be very clear about things. We have to be very clear. And we have what we call the backyard gardening, the food security gardening, and so on. This is good. And so I believe from a policy standpoint, we need to look and see how do we program that for those purposes and not get confused with the commercial operations. So that even our officers, our extensionists, our technicians, our policymakers, our bankers, etc., can know how to program our mind, because the worst problem you could have in going forward is being unclear and unsure. This is one of the biggest challenges you would have in doing anything. And so in this regards, as we move forward today, we need to look at what is referred to, I was speaking to a colleague of mine and he introduced me to that, so that is not just my idea, but I thought it's very thoughtful to share. It's the 3 Ds. D as in dog. It says, to move forward and to get anything done, we need to look at the destination. Where is it you want to go? Some people may say your vision, but no, sometimes we need to speak in the real language. Destination. Where do you want to go? And this has to be very clear. So if I'm not too sure if I'm going with backyard gardening, I'm going to commercial gardening, or commercial farming, then our extension officers, our agronomists, our media folks, they are confused. So you may want to have a unit that deals specifically with that. In fact, I even jokingly said, and maybe we need to put this under the Ministry of Social Services so that that would help with the seed program, and they can even be more focused in the way that they roll out the programs and be more efficient. But of course, that is just my idea, thinking about it. The next thought we need to look at under the D is that we need to be able to know direction. And a lot of times, that is where we get lost. Because all of us inside here today have an idea as to how to even got here this morning. We took different routes. We left different times. And we even came in different doors. We even sat in different seats. All those things were directions that we were taking and creating in our mind. So we need to know what is that pathway. But that pathway must be assessed. It might be quick fix. It might be a long agenda. But at the end of the day, we need to look at, see, how is that changing the life of agriculture, our farmers and the country? That direction, is it the right road to walk at this time? And the other D is the one of the decision. You may get there, but you may do nothing. And so today, as we sit and gather in this session, we need to be making decisions to suggest and advise the government, to advise the ministry and the minister and his team, how we see from our vision and standpoint getting to the destination. And this 3 Ds, I think, is very critical. Through the years, we have had many types of destinations that had outcomes. In 2009, I recall, we had a national agriculture strategic plan. I recall only recently I was speaking to Mr. James. He had an agriculture plan 2015, I think, to 2035. And that is perhaps the only current agriculture plan Grenada has right now. And of course, we have the National Development Plan, which also expires in 2025. And then, of course, we have, I think, the National Food Security Plan, which is supposed to end sometime in 2026. So we have a set of plans around. And they were good. When I look at them, they have good things in them. But the policies to support them, the actions to execute, the framework within the whole government and ministries need to be done. And I say, who are the people? Some of the people who are involved in, even myself, sit down and we discussed and we had ideas. But somewhere, that decision never took place. So I really want us to not end up with no decision. So as I read before I come to this session, I like to read a lot of my era, which is the era of the revolution as a young boy. And I realized that there are a few things that were very clear that sort of correlate back to some of my thoughts. Where do we go and what do we want? In agriculture, and others may have different perspective, but I think I can share my perspective. We have to look at 3 fundamental parts of the agriculture system. We are in this to make money for the farmers and the country. That's the first basic fundamental. The first aspect is we need to look at our own food security. So whatever we do here today, we must think about our own food security. How does government policies, legislations, etc. help our food security, both in terms of producing our own food and both in terms of trying to not import so much of those foods? And what are the things that government need to do? Because government is policy, so you must call on them to do that. The second part of it has to do with value addition. You must add value to what we have no matter what you do, in some form or format. And that could also be for our own food security. It could also be for export. And then, of course, you must have export. You must, no matter what you do. You have to make it happen, whether it's value added or the raw product. And I jotted those down on a paper, and I went back and I started reading, only to realize that this was clearly stated by our deceased, died Prime Minister Maurice Bishop. He spoke of those said 3 things. Then I went forward and I looked at another interview by Bernard Cole. Well, he's alive still. Then Minister of Finance. And he spoke of the same things. But then he had some modifications. He spoke about markets and he spoke about connection with tourism. And how do we make all of this surround our independence as a country? And I raised these things because sometimes we forget our history and we think we are trying to create something new. So I want us today also to juggle our minds back 30, 40, 50 years ago and pull into those things what existed back then, and let us see how we can add value to what we are doing today. And of course, 2 last things before I go. One, whatever we do here today will not be judged by what we are going to discuss here today, but it's going to be judged by the farmers getting more money in their pocket, our business people, supermarkets, and so on, making more money, and the country being better. That is how we're going to be judged, not what we see here today. And it means that those who have to implement need to be executioners. I use those words. And the last part I want to say, which normally maybe I should have started and say first, you know, but it's an icebreaker in the beginning. I don't know how you call it towards the end. I don't know this type of words, but it's to the end, maybe closing remarks. Someone sent me a video last night. I was reading and preparing for today, and very insightful. And it goes like this. And maybe it's metaphorical in certain way. They say there was a lion. Well, it's lion, but it actually was an elephant, actually, based on the video. But you could make it up to be anything you want to be. So it was strong elephant, and it was out as one of the soldiers of the king's palace, and they were out fighting good, you know. But you know, after a while, you know, you get old and you have to retire a little bit. So they tend to keep this elephant close to home, you know. Just no big mission, stay close to home. So one day the elephant wandered out a little bit, and it so happened the elephant got stuck. And those of you who look a lot of stuff on Facebook, you realize some animals get stuck in the mud and they have problems coming out. So could you imagine this big elephant having problems to get off this mud? And you know, the people came and they was like, oh, this big elephant, he was a hero. What's happened? How do we? And they were sort of trying to pull, and they just couldn't get that elephant out. So the story goes that one old general, you know, sometimes that's the thing about wisdom, came in the room and said, look, let's get the battle drums. Let's get those drums of the battle, and let's start revving up the rhythms. And within minutes, the elephant came out. So I say this to say that agriculture is our elephant. I say this to say that we today, in our expressions and our thoughts, will be the battle drums for agriculture. Thank you.